Good morning, welcome to the good world. I'm Seth, that's Charlie. We are on the way to the dog park. I know that I said in yesterday's episode that would probably be the last episode, and what I should do is model the importance of taking vacation. But I'm taking vacation next week, and I realized I had more to say, and I also, fun thing about habit formation is that when you get in the habit of doing something, say, so what I have started doing more recently is like I get up in the morning, I put on my workout clothes, I have coffee and breakfast, and then I get on the elliptical for a pretty short time, for 10 minutes. The workouts will get more intense, but right now I'm just trying to build the repetitive habit, and then take a shower. And then normally what I do is I take the dog to the dog park and I record this, and today I was not going to do that, but what's fun is my brain is now at the point of I just did all of the things that normally lead into my recording an episode of The Good World, so I may as well just go and record an episode of The Good World, because it doesn't quite feel right without it. So that's good. I'm sort of building this habit, building this muscle. I'm feeling pretty pleased about that. Even if it means that I don't know, it's not really a lot of added work to my day. It's a little bit of extra emotional labor and energy, certainly. Oh my God, the wildflowers here are so pretty. But it's also, the more I do it, the less effort it takes. So that's good, and I'm really just trying to sort of build up this habit at this point. It will at some point move out of the car and into, definitely once we move to the new house, it will move in there. But for now, it's here. So I had some further thoughts on some of the stuff that I was talking about yesterday with laws and rules and sort of the way that they end up being gamed. Couple of thoughts. So, thing one, I was catching up with my friend Karen yesterday, because it was, as I mentioned yesterday, it was my birthday. It was also, by the way, it was Earth Day. So happy Earth Day also. I'm pretty pleased to share. That's the second time I've used the phrase pretty pleased, and I'm not saying pretty please, I'm saying pretty pleased, but it still feels like I am a 9-year-old asking for candy. Anyway, I was catching up with my friend Karen for my birthday that I share with the planet. Be kind to your planet. It's the only one you have. It's your home. So I was catching up with her, and I was sort of telling her about, all of... So I will say, my closest and oldest friends are sort of accustomed to seeing my life take very sudden shifts, because it's a thing that's happened multiple times now. I went from, very, very intensely focused on becoming an actor to completely throwing that out and focusing on data, and I sort of, went into baseball, and then I went into politics, and now here I am. It honestly is... if any of you watch Bob's Burgers, which is a very much favorite television show of mine, Bob's Burgers is like my happy show for sure. But there is an episode where they talk about how Gene, one of the children, keeps changing personas, and it's sort of flashbacks to him in different costumes, and each time he's saying, "This is me now! This is me now!" And honestly, my life is a lot of that, right? And I understand at this point that this may not be permanent, and, my path may take me back to things that I did before. I'm certainly not throwing away the idea of being involved in politics forever, but I definitely need, at a minimum, I need a break, a major break from both the world of organized politics and the world of industry. I just got very tired of not working for myself, of being in a job where my main value was to make someone else look good. I've been in multiple jobs where pretty much all of my jobs in politics were dedicated to making someone else look good with my work. And you know, when it was Barack Obama, like, that's what I signed up for sure. But at a certain point, it's like, well, yeah, I don't know. I just want to do my own thing, and I don't want to be beholden to the promises that someone is going to make without even asking me if they're possible. Anyway, I've gone a little far afield here, but in my conversation with Karen yesterday, I was telling her about sort of all of these transitions that are happening in my life, and one of the things I said is that I have just gotten very fed up with trying to work within the system, because I have found, at least for me, I think it is very important to have competent people working within the system to make change. I don't think I am competent enough to be one of the people doing that. I think I am pretty good at sort of talking about ideas. Oh my goodness, those geese have geeselings. They're just walking on the shoulder of the road, and it's just two geese with, also, like, geese are evil nightmare creatures, but, like, man, their goslings are super cute. That was so adorable. Just fuzzy little goslings walking along the side of the road. It is kind of magical out here sometimes, you know? I know, Charlie. Anyway, so you know, I spent a lot of time trying to make change from within the system, and what I found was that it wasn't making me happy, and it wasn't making change. And honestly, the professional, progressive political space suffers from the same problems that I see everywhere, which is that it all has sort of turned into a fight for status, and there are a lot of people who are just trying to live their lives, but the people who make their way into positions of power are there because they are fighting for status and sort of telling narratives about their own greatness as a way to boost their own personal profile and their own wealth at the expense of the work. And I have always cared more about the work. I think it kind of comes out of the theater nerd in me, where, like, or not even theater nerd, just actor in me, where, you know, doing a play was never just about myself. It was always about what I could produce collaboratively with the other performers and the director and the assistant director and the stage manager and the set designer and the sound designer and the light designer. Right, there are all these people who sort of put their work into a theatrical production that you don't really know about if you're just an audience member, but that was always the magical part of it for me. And what I cared about was the product. And in politics, and in especially the business of politics, you don't get a lot of that. It's really just a lot of, like, who can make a name for themselves and open doors for themselves, and that often comes at the expense of the work. And so here I am. This is a spot where I can at least be proud of the work that I'm doing. I'm creating something on my own terms. I don't really know if it's good. I think it seems like some people find it enjoyable. That's great. Hopefully it's not too self-indulgent, but I also realize it's plenty self-indulgent. Anyway, I was talking about all of this with my friend Karen, and she referred to the fact that I referred to, she said something about, you know, I know you've gotten tired of what you refer to as the system. And her comment highlights a point that is super important, which is that all of the ways to talk about these problems have been, like, mocked and dismissed and shamed, mostly as a way to keep people engaging with the problems, right? When I talk about, like, oh, the system is this, the system is that, I sound like a paranoid lunatic, or at least like some weird delusional hippie bullshit artist. I don't know. And I know that, and that's really frustrating, and it's really challenging. Because here's the thing. The system is not, the thing that I am referring to as the system is not like something that a bunch of powerful people sitting in a room concocted together. The system is the completely unplanned result of thousands of years of human cognitive bias. And as a social psychologist, it's actually, like, pretty straightforward. Charlie, you're okay. To see the way, it's pretty straightforward to see the way that, like, someone who would have accrued power in, a despotic system or a monarchy or whatever would have cognitively and emotionally come up with explanations to justify their power, and those explanations have to do with their own greatness and how they deserve it, and other people exist to serve them. I talk a lot about how psych, academic psych jargon is really opaque and unhelpful, but there's an idea from psychology called cognitive dissonance, and what that really means is mental and emotional discomfort. And cognitive dissonance, mental and emotional discomfort, is a thing that we will jump through mental hoops and do all kinds of backflips to avoid any of that mental discomfort. And so if we're in a position where we have power over people, what we will often do, instead of recognizing that maybe our power is unjustified, we will do mental contortions to come up with explanations for why we deserve that power and other people don't, and why we are better than them. And we will tell that story, and stories are a really powerful thing. And so that very simple process, repeated over thousands and thousands of years, and with, violence and oppression, both violence directed at the oppressed and violence as a response to oppression, over thousands of years, and efforts to remake things and change things, and efforts to resist change, right? Change is a thing that we are often bred to fear, and conditioned to fear, and it's not because someone is saying, I want to make that person afraid of change. It's just because someone who is afraid of change, because change in the past has sometimes been scary and sometimes been violent and awful. If you sort of internalize that resistance to change, you'll end up passing it on to anyone you have influence on. So when I talk about the system, it's not some group of people sitting in a room together, right? It's not the Illuminati, it's not the Jews, it's not the Rothschilds, which is often kind of used synonymously and interchangeably with the Jews. It's not the Masons, it's not there is no secret room of people who are setting up the entire system. Yes, there are meetings of powerful people where they make decisions, but the fact is that any decision a human being makes, no human being is a super effective genius. All of us are just kind of guessing. And we sort of tend to think that the world is run by a cabal of hyper-competent people. And, we look for, one of the reasons, I'll talk about this for a minute, one of the reasons that QAnon has become so popular is because there's this idea that Q is in on all of the secret knowledge. And here's what I will tell you from having been, not in all of the rooms, but in some of the rooms, and certainly close to a lot of the rooms. I can give you examples, right? I was in the boiler room of the Remain campaign on election night for Brexit, and David Cameron was looking at the numbers that my models, my predictions for how everything would go, and everything came in 2 points off of our estimate, but that also meant that it was clear early on that we were going to lose, and I was one of a small number of people who got to know that David Cameron was going to resign the night before he did, as opposed to once he did, which is not to say that I'm in every room, but it's an example of I've been in some rooms, I've been near other rooms, I've been around a lot of people who have wealth and power, and I've had opportunities to meet billionaires and things like that. And the secret knowledge that all of these folks have is that actually no one is super smart or super competent. Everyone is actually just a person grasping and trying to figure things out. I was talking with a friend of mine who is an attorney, and he was telling me that he was presenting to a potential client, and he appeared on the Zoom in a suit, and they thought that was weird because no one does that anymore, and they were thinking of ruling him out for hiring him. They ended up, liking what he had to say and hiring him. But that is such a good example. The fact that whether or not he wore a suit would have an influence on, he didn't tell me what company, it's confidential, but like, it's a large company. His firm only works with large companies. Charlie, you're fine. And the fact that, million and billion dollar decisions are made on the basis of one random person's appearance really tells you how completely arbitrary most of the decisions are, because the people who lead any large company or any country or the CIA or whatever, like, they're all still just people. It is not a lie to say that there are people who are trying to rig things in their favor and trying to manipulate things in their favor. But what I was talking about yesterday is most of that stuff, to the extent that it's effective, it's stuff that's happening out in the open. Secret plans are really, really hard to pull off because A, people are not that competent, and B, people don't like keeping secrets. People really like, especially if you have a story that makes you sound important, people love to tell stories that make them sound important. There's a reason that Watergate fell apart almost immediately, and that's because secret plans are hard to pull off. People are not that competent, and people aren't very good at keeping secrets. So when I talk about the system is not the Jews or the Illuminati or the CIA or the secret child eating cult, as though eating another human gives you magical powers, as though we live in a world where that's how things work. The system is not any of those things. The system is just the end result of thousands of years of human cognitive bias bouncing off of each other to get and not even arriving at today as like an end of a timeline, just today is one point on the longer timeline of this. And as I like to say, we can become the singularity, we can become self-aware robots if we recognize that the system is just sort of an arbitrary thing that we've inherited, and we can change it. Just as a lot of our habits and behaviors are things that we've inherited and not chosen, and we can recognize that and we can practice ways to change it. Obviously, we're at the dog park. Charlie is excited, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a minute. Hello. This is just a reminder that if you are enjoying this program, then whatever platform you are using to consume it, whether that's YouTube or a podcast, to please subscribe, and then you can get all of the episodes as they come out. It's not always going to be this thing with me driving and Charlie. It's going to change once we move, and I expect it'll keep evolving in the future. But for now, this is what it is. And so if you enjoy it, please subscribe. Please share it with other people who you think might enjoy it. If you are using a platform that enables you to click a like button, please do that too, because that'll help spread the word, and just spread the word. This is, I honestly have very little interest in getting famous. I'm an introvert, and so I don't really like that idea, but I am saying these things because I think they're important. And if you think they're important too, then you can spread the word. And if you don't think that they're important, or you think I'm wrong, then just ignore them. You have that right as an autonomous human being, and I love you anyway. Okie doke. Bye. Hi, welcome back to the good world. We had a lovely time at the dog park. Charlie chased a giant dog named Yogi. If you stick around to the end, you'll get to see a short clip of that. Charlie gets really a little into the humping sometimes, so he got a little bit humpy with Yogi. But Yogi is huge, so Yogi did not care. So that was all things considered, that was a pretty good outcome. So the system rules. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a better way to talk about the system, and I think it's maybe just sort of like, I don't know if it's the status quo monster or the cognitive bias monster. It's like one of those things, right? It's because it is just the aggregation of humans doing their best without realizing all of the ways that they're hurting each other, because that's honestly the ways that we hurt each other tend to be pretty much always are because we either don't know what we're doing, or we think we're doing something good because we think someone deserves it, and we sort of, appoint ourselves the custodians of justice, and we mistake revenge and justice because our brains just think that revenge is the same thing as safety, and it's not, and, it's a whole I've talked about this stuff plenty, and it's just kind of the way that all of our individual mental shortcuts add up to a whole lot of brokenness and a whole lot of harm. But so yesterday I was talking about, laws and the fact that our laws sort of by definition are not applied equally, because as long as you can afford a really good lawyer, then you can do things that for some people would be considered breaking the law, but for you will not be. Or you can get, a lot of what happens with financial crimes is that there is the company that does it ends up getting fined, and the fine just gets, baked into the profits that they make. Sorry, I'm just noticing as I'm pulling up to this intersection that my phone is shaking, and I'm realizing that probably happens a lot. So, sorry if if things get shaky sometimes. Anyway, so our laws have a lot of unfairness and injustice baked into them, and so when we say things like follow the rules, those people think the rules don't apply to them, whatever. It's because we have a system in which the rules do not remotely apply equally to everyone. And the solution, I heard something on the radio yesterday when Susie and I were coming home from dinner, and they were talking about gun violence, and there was a comment that was, you're not going to solve this problem with one law. What you really need is a bunch of laws. And I was listening to it, and I was just like, that's not enough. I mean, sure, I would love to see some laws that reduce the amount of guns that we have, just in general, in any number of directions. I understand that the Second Amendment exists and has been interpreted by our system to mean a lot of things. I think our society would be better with a lot fewer guns, because I think guns create the illusion of safety more than they create actual safety. And in fact, most of what they create is just more destruction and violence and trauma. And I think that, if you've been listening to me across the last few weeks, however many episodes I have at this point, that I think that creating trauma in the name of good tends to just do a lot of harm. And, violence in self-defense, first off, is often unnecessary because our brains perceive threat at a much higher level than it actually exists. And so a huge number of self-defense violence, a huge amount of it is actually unnecessary. It's just because we're afraid, and we don't like being afraid, and so our reaction is less a response to an actual threat and more a response to our fear. And guns give power to our fear, and that's incredibly dangerous, right? One of the most important things we can do is work to overcome our fear, not to give it the ability to destroy a life. So I think fewer guns would be good. I understand, I also don't think that the state having a monopoly on violence is good either. I would, if I could snap my fingers and make every gun disappear, including the ones carried by members of the state, then I would probably do that. But that is a much more complex conversation, and sort of legislative specifics are difficult. But I heard this person on the radio talking about it wouldn't be enough to just pass one law, you would need a whole suite of laws. And I just got really frustrated because laws alone are not the answer to anything. They are absolutely often part of the answer, but you are not going to solve a cultural problem with better laws. And a huge amount of our gun violence in America in particular is a cultural problem. And if you listen to yesterday's episode, laws and culture have a symbiotic relationship, mutually informative, cyclical, right? Laws influence culture, culture influences guns. Those two things go back and forth. But we're not going to solve our gun problems just by passing laws, because there are a lot of people who are still going to think that they really, really need guns, and they're going to go and they're going to get their guns. And if we are able to enforce laws, it won't be until really horrible things have already happened. Right? This episode was particularly talking about red flag laws, which I certainly don't have a problem with, and I think they tend to be a good way to reduce the amount of gun violence, but they also rely on a bunch of steps happening that, ideally do happen before someone does something really violent, but they rely on a lot of things that aren't always going to happen, and so like a red flag law is not enough. The problems that we have are cultural, and in particular, they relate to cultural beliefs. First off, that guns will make you safer. And again, they might make you feel safer, but that's not the same thing. Having the ability to take your fear and massively raise the stakes is a disaster waiting to happen in basically every circumstance. Something I have found repeatedly in my life is that most of the time I'm afraid is the time I don't end up getting hurt. The things that hurt you tend to be the things that you don't see coming, because you're sort of on the lookout for things that might. But also most of the time, if I'm afraid of someone and then I start interacting with them, the vast majority of the time, it turns out that they're just a person living their lives. And we put all of our fears on other people because we don't know them. And if we can get to know them and they can get to know us, we can usually work through it. Again, and this is something I've talked about a lot here, like I benefit massively from being a non-threatening white man in America, where people sort of automatically find me disarming. That helps a lot, but it's also a skill that all of us can practice. And sure, it's not fair, if you are a large black man, it is not fair that you are sort of forced by society to practice the skill of making people not be afraid of you. But at the same time, the skill of making people be less afraid of you is a worthwhile skill for anyone. And so, it is simultaneously unfair that we put that burden extra on some people relative to others, but it's still a good skill, and I would encourage you, whoever you are, to just sort of work on being able to disarm people. You can do it with humor, you can do it with compassion, all kinds of things. You can do it with calmness. I kind of, have just sort of internalized, without having to work too hard at it, a lot of those, I don't know, I guess I would call them, they're skills. They're certainly practices, but they are, unlike something like not eating sugar, they're practices that I've been able to sort of just develop naturally, out of my environment, where diffusing tense situations in my home was an important thing. And a thing that I needed to do before I was old enough to even realize I was doing it. So, yeah, the problem, our gun violence, I do think laws have a major role to do that, but we, and especially I think people on sort of my side of the political divide, have a tendency to think that laws are the solution and are the entirety of the solution. And there's a whole concept in logic, which is thinking about the distinction between necessary and sufficient. And I think that there are laws that are necessary for reducing the amount of violence we have in this country. I do not think any law is going to be sufficient to address the problem, because the thing that we're criminalizing is the fear that people have drilled into them, the anger that they have drilled into them, the isolation that they have drilled into them, and just making it harder for those folks to get access to guns isn't going to change the fact that they are terrified, they are angry, and they are isolated. And in a sense, if the rest of us are thinking, okay, well now all of their fear and anger and isolation is not my problem because they can't use a gun to kill me with it, we're just ignoring someone who is suffering. And it's hard to look at someone who does violence and recognize that they are suffering. But for the most part, people who do violence only do it because they're suffering. And they are generally suffering in really convoluted ways where they don't even realize how much they are suffering, and they certainly don't understand why they are suffering. Right? I have, I've talked previously on this show about like Hitler and his self-hatred, and that is an example of someone who was suffering and didn't understand. Like, I don't know what the source of his suffering was. I don't know Hitler personally. I haven't like read detailed biographies of him, and even if I had, I don't know that it would teach me what I need to know about where his suffering came from. But it is simultaneously true that his suffering did not come from people like my grandparents, and also that he blamed people like my grandparents for his suffering. And we tend to just look at the outcome, which is all of the violence and destruction and suffering that Hitler passed on to other people, without seeing the source as being his own suffering. And look, I don't know that Hitler's suffering would have been possible to address, but there are plenty of people in America who just feel angry and isolated and afraid, and guns or no guns, that is a thing that we have the ability to address. Like, I talk a fair amount about meeting everyone's basic needs, and part of that is money, right? Having financial freedom. Part of that is food, part of that is housing, part of that is education, part of that is healthcare, and part of that is mental health care. Because isolation and anger and fear are natural reactions to the environment that you are in. And I know that because I have had those reactions, and I've taken those feelings out on other people, not with guns and not with I didn't murder anyone, and I haven't caused that much physical damage, but I've hurt other people deeply on a psychological and emotional level, and so I understand this entire cycle just is the way that pain passes itself along from one person to another. And so in the case of guns, in the case of financial crimes, in the case of literally anything our laws can do, the laws and the legal system are not enough. There also needs to be a culture. Look, a huge part of what drives our legal system is a cultural norm that says that all you need is for your lawyer to come up with an argument for why what you're doing is okay. And there was an example of this yesterday where a senator, a much reviled senator, gave a little press conference opposing Democrats expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court, and was sort of asked to compare it to the fact that Republicans held up Barack Obama's Supreme Court nomination for most of a year while approving Donald Trump's Supreme Court nomination after people had already started voting. It was also kind of, there was some obvious hypocrisy, because the senator talked about how Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that Democrats should not expand the number of seats, and therefore he argued Democrats shouldn't do it. And he didn't mention the fact that Justice Ginsburg also said that President Trump should wait until after the election to appoint her replacement, and Cruz was one of the people, I guess I named him, whatever, one of the people pushing that. And, I think there are a lot of reasons that mostly have to do with strategy, and I think, there is very little that anyone is going to do with one of these arguments to convince someone on the other side that they are right. But the thing of it is the hypocrisy built into the system, which is, it doesn't matter if your arguments can be refuted, as long as you can make an argument that justifies what you're doing and ignore counter arguments, you can go ahead and do what you're doing. And that is not just a law, that is a norm. That is a cultural thing in our system. Our system basically says that as long as you have a good lawyer and you can come up with a plausible justification for what you want to do, you can go ahead and do that thing. And that again, comes back to what I was saying yesterday, right? Like, the rules, people think the rules don't apply to them because the rules don't apply equally to everyone. And if you have a good lawyer who can interpret the rules in a way that lets you be extremely selfish or just completely naked in your pursuit of power, then you can go ahead and do it. There's nothing stopping you. And you know what? I don't think that it would be necessarily good. I certainly don't think it would be effective to have laws that try to fix this. This is a cultural thing. This is a normative thing. And so it is sort of on all of us to talk about how this system, where as long as you can justify the thing, then go ahead and do it, because we're following the rules. It's all about following the rules. And that is why the culture of making everything about the rules doesn't work. There needs to be more to it than just the rules. The rules are a framework. The rules are a guideline. And look, legally, yes, the rules determine what can and cannot be punished. But the rules are not all you need to worry about when you are thinking about the damage that you are doing to a person, to an institution, to whatever. The rules are there, but also you have to think about what you're doing. I can't force you to. There is no mechanism for me to force you to, and I don't think that legal mechanisms to force you to would be good, but I am going to strongly encourage you to do more than just say, well, the rules say it's fine, so therefore it's fine. We're not playing Monopoly. We're playing games with other people's lives. And we need to stop treating other people's lives like they are just pieces on a game board that we are trying to win. Life is not a game. You're never going to win life. You're never going to lose life. You can get our broken society to treat you like a winner, but most of the people I know who have gotten to that point are still miserable. And plenty of the people I know who society treats like losers are actually pretty happy. So maybe, let's just let go of the idea of stepping on each other for our own glory, because it doesn't do anything good. And let's abandon the idea that all that matters is the rules and following the rules and making the rules what we want. The rules are just part of it. You know, plenty of horrible things have been completely legal. The rules said it was totally fine for human beings to own other human beings for a lot of American history. The rules, Hitler was democratically elected, right? The rules said that everything that Hitler did was okay. He did it all according to the rules. He changed the rules to make them be what would enable him to do it, but just relying on the rules is never going to get us anywhere. We need more than just the rules. We need to talk to each other. We need to listen to each other. We need to care about each other, and we need to take care of each other and ourselves. Anyway, that's how I feel about rules. So to all of my friends working within the legal system, all of my friends who are working on legislation to try to make our rules a little better, great. I'm glad you're doing it. I think we need people working at every level to make the world a little better. The level that I'm trying to work at is this cultural one. I am just trying to tell you, just saying follow the rules, just saying let's change the rules, none of that is a solution to our problems. Our problems are so much deeper than that. And our problems are we have stopped caring about each other. We have stopped caring about our world. All of this, if you are a religious person, we have stopped caring about God's creation and God's children and started to instead convince ourselves that all God wants is for us to step on everyone else. And that is ridiculous. So we got to get past that. We got to let go of those ideas. We got to care about each other, because it's the only way any of this is going to get any better. And we can all benefit so much from a world in which we care about each other, in which we support each other. Like, if all you care about is your own personal benefit, guess what? You will benefit in a world where everyone around you is supported. For one, you won't have to come up with these twisted justifications for why you deserve to be treated well and someone else doesn't. And second, the amount of innovation that can come from people who are currently not being invested in is just beyond comprehension. It is the opportunity cost of our world is a better world. The opportunity cost is a term from economics, if you're not familiar with it, which is that anytime you choose to do one thing, the opportunity cost is you are giving up the things that you can't do because you're doing the first thing. So if I If I have $100 and I am choosing between, I don't know, getting cable for a month and getting something that costs $100, I don't know, cable's more than $100 these days. America. I don't know. The opportunity cost is the other thing, all of the other things you could have gotten that you're not getting because you're spending your $100 on cable. That's opportunity cost. And in our case, the opportunity cost of a society in which we glorify rich people and powerful people, and we treat everyone who is not rich and powerful as a pawn in a larger game. The opportunity cost is a world where we can be happy, where we can have incredible technology, where we can be free and liberated, and all of the things that the founders of the United States of America thought that they were trying to build. As I said yesterday, their definition of who counted as a person was different from mine. But the idea of liberty, the idea of distributing power, is a really good and powerful one, and we shouldn't throw that out just because they didn't think all people were people, just because they treated a bunch of human beings as property. That was pretty fucked up. But honestly, we're not that much better now. We've just removed it from being explicitly legal, but we still treat a lot of people as being pawns to help the people who matter accumulate more wealth and power. And again, the opportunity cost of that is the world that I want to live in, and I think a lot of you out there also want to live in it. I don't think any of us are really happy with the way the world is right now. And so much of our policy is driven by the idea that any change would make everything worse. And you know what? It's not true. Sometimes changes make things worse. But on average, they don't. On average, things have gotten better over time, even if not as fast as we might like. And there is also a resistance that is just based on, well, it's really hard to figure out ways to make things better, so let's not even try. Let's just leave everything exactly the way that it is, and, whatever happens, that's what God wants. That's... Again, I don't... I don't claim to have any unique personal relationship with God, but God put all of us here and gave us this incredible world. And I think God wants us to care about everyone and not just treat certain human beings as being godlike when they are, as I said earlier, just kind of a bunch of human beings making very arbitrary decisions, not being particularly smart, but having a lot of ways that they are able to game the system. They're not dumb, but they're not smarter than, random people I have met in underdeveloped countries. I met a gardener in Costa Rica who was at least as smart, I would say smarter, than some of the high-powered, extremely wealthy executives that I have interacted with in my time. So, let's just throw out the idea that our entire hierarchy tells us anything useful. And that because people have used the laws to get where they are, that means everything is great. We can have a culture where we value everyone, and that's the culture we should have. Anyway, I hope you will find ways to practice that in your own life, because, I'm not going to be able to do it alone. I'm not trying to do it alone. I'm just trying to inspire other people to see the potential that I see in you and in everyone else around me, and to help empower each other and to help lift us all up into the world we can have, into the kingdom of God, whatever you would like to call it, the beloved community, utopia. Right? We don't, just because there has been a lot of utopian thinking that didn't work out doesn't mean we should stop striving to make the world better. And the ways that the world has always been made better are by empowering people and spreading power widely, and not lifting individuals up as being gods or superheroes when they're just people. And so anything we can do, whatever that looks like, as long as it's moving in that direction, we're going to be good. So let's try to do that. All right, my phone is overheating, and I'm home, so I'm going to go inside and do inside things. We'll be back in a bit. Please like and subscribe. 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 Hi, welcome back to the good world. I am gonna do a little meditation to round out the week. Should be nice. And then I'll send you on your way. So I don't really have much to add on top of all of the things I just said. I think we can have a culture and a legal system that values everyone, and I think we can use that to shape a world that values everyone. Don't think we're going to do that if we are terrified of each other and fighting each other for every little bit of status and treating the world like it is zero sum when it is not. Zero sum is a term that probably a lot of you know, but it's like an economics term, and it sort of refers to, are you playing a game where there's one winner, where like everything you get comes at the expense of someone else, or vice versa? Or is it something where actually there's a way to like grow the pot so that both of you benefit? And the world is very much the latter. Like we have been able to grow. It's not like there has been a finite supply of wealth forever and it just keeps getting stolen and passed around from person to person. So every time one person does something at someone else's expense, that actually costs all of the collective benefit. Like we can do a lot to it. The world is not zero sum. There are some things that are, but mostly they are actual games, right? There's only one champion in Major League Baseball at the end of the year. Just as an example. But there is the collective supply of wealth is constantly growing, and stealing from someone else does nothing to grow it. And a huge amount of our economy is not based around growing the overall pool. It's just based on it's just based on moving money around in a way that more and more of it gets concentrated in the hands of people who can pay to bring more of it into themselves. And I know, because that's the world I came from and have spent a lot of time in. And, there's a story that gets told about how they are creating jobs and wealth and all of these things. And it's a lot of it is mythology. I don't know, it might be 10% true, but a lot of it is mythology. And we don't need to treat myths that people want us to tell about themselves as true. It doesn't mean we need to demonize anyone or condemn them, because I don't think that is helpful. But we can recognize that if someone is trying to sell us a story about how they are the most brilliant human being ever and that's why they're a billionaire, like maybe they're just trying to deal with their own insecurity about the fact that they probably know that they don't actually deserve to live so extravagantly better than other people, especially while so many people are struggling to get by on a day-to-day basis. We have enough money to give everyone financial freedom, and the wealthy can still be extremely wealthy. And so I would really love to get to a point where that's the world we have. Anyway, let's do some meditation. So I'm going to meditate. I invite you to join me. You are certainly not obligated to, and if you want to change the thing, that's also fine. If you are listening somewhere that you can't actually sit and silently meditate and close your eyes, if you're, say, listening to this at work, or you're doing chores around the house, or you're driving or whatever, if you're driving, I hope you're listening on the podcast, or at least just listening and not watching the video, because that's extremely unsafe. But if you were doing something where you can't join me in meditation, well, I hope you will still sort of take 10 minutes to be silent and appreciate silence and just sort of be alone with your thoughts. It's scary because our thoughts can be really uncomfortable, but avoiding them doesn't solve anything, and getting used to them can help us work through them. And so that's a big part of what I try to do with this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same mantra as yesterday, but you're going to hear this bell, and then after 10 minutes, you'll hear it again. In between, I'm going to sit here with my eyes closed and my hands folded in my lap, and I'm going to just slowly breathe in and out. As I breathe in, I'm going to think to myself, breathing in, I have arrived. As I breathe out, I'm going to think to myself, breathing out, I am home. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. And it's just that over and over. And because I'm a human being and my brain is doing lots of things all the time, sooner or later, my mind is going to wander. I'm going to start thinking about the curry I'm about to have for lunch from Pinoy, which is an amazing Lao restaurant here in Grass Valley, that we went to for dinner for my birthday last night. So maybe I'll start thinking about the curry I'm going to have in a minute. Whatever it is my mind wanders to, sooner or later I will realize, oh, my mind has wandered, and I'll just come right back. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. And that's just a practice for sort of keeping my brain focused on what I want it to focus on. Your mind is always going to wander, and the art of attention is not about preventing your mind from wandering. It's about catching it as soon as possible and just gently directing it back. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, let's hit, I almost hit the record button, and I meant to hit the start button. So we got a 15-second countdown. Nice big deep breaths here. Okay. We got 5 seconds. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay. That was nice. I hope you enjoyed that 10-minute break from whatever's going on in your day. I had some thoughts that came in there at some point, and they went away. Excuse me, now I'm sleepy. Also, forgive my cartoon sounds. Fun fact, I am part cartoon. It's just my ethnicity, it's just trying to honor my ancestors. Yeah, there was definitely something else I was going to say. I don't know. It was probably more or less in line with the other things I was saying. Can't rely on laws to solve all the problems. Can't rely on culture to solve all the problems. It needs both. And it needs all of us caring about each other. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. There is also a temptation, when we look at all of these large systemic problems, to say that the problem is those people. And however you define those people, there are a lot of different ways that people do it, right? For the Nazis, it was Jews, it was the Roma, it was black people, it was gay and queer, and anyone who was sort of not conforming to standard heterosexual norms. And for Jews, it has become Nazis. Sometimes it has also, for a lot of modern Jews, it has become Palestinians or Arabs writ large. For a lot of Americans, those people are immigrants or they're black people. And for a lot of other folks, those people are white men, which is, a group that includes me. This comes out of a conversation I had with someone in which she sort of asserted that one of the big problems is tech bros. And I think the tech bro culture is super, super toxic and creates a lot of problems. But tech bros, like any dude bros out there, are just a product of an environment that shapes them into that. Oh, excuse me. Car decided to make some noise. It had been on electric mode, and I guess it ran out of electric. I was just trying to keep my phone cool with the AC. Anyway, yeah. So whoever for you is those people who are the problem. I'm not going to tell you that they're not, right? There are a lot of really problematic cultures, and, I think grouping anyone into a category and just sort of using it as a blanket way to discuss any group of people is going to erase a lot of individuality and just ignore a lot of what makes people who they are. And that's for both good and bad. But anytime there is a large group of people acting together, whether it's acting in a way that is productive or a way that is harmful, all of those people were shaped by similar forces that turned them into similar people, right? It's not just we blame people for who they have become because it's easier than seeing all of the systemic cultural forces that shaped them and turned them into that person. And it's much easier to blame someone. And this is a thing that our entire system does, right? It's our justice system in particular, but also our entire legal system is sort of based on the idea that if you litigate every single dispute, then generally that's going to add up to a good solution. And the problem is that all of those individual disputes are a product of the entire ecosystem friggin' factory that is turning us into people who do crappy things to each other. And so that's why when I talk about trying to change culture, that is a hugely important part of this process. It is not enough to simply look at every dispute, at every crime, and deal with it after it has already happened and try to resolve it. In medicine, there has been an important and generally valuable shift away from it's towards preventative care, and I am blanking on what the alternative term is, but you can either wait for someone to get sick and treat their illness, or you can try to help them avoid getting sick in the first place. And our entire society is built around waiting for sicknesses to appear and then trying to treat each symptom as though it's not a huge constellation of problems that keep producing those symptoms over and over. And so we need to be more preventative in our approach to our societal ills. It doesn't mean we should stop treating the individual problems, but it means if we want those problems to go away, we need to do a lot more to prevent them before they happen. And so when I talk about things like violence and just sort of any crime where someone is doing things at the expense of someone else, like, sure, litigate the individual thing, but also recognize that there is a much larger system that's feeding into it. And if you really want to make change for the better and for the longer term, you need to do more than just wait for people to fuck up and punish them. You need to help them learn how to avoid fucking up in the first place. And the way we do that is through teaching people, through caring for them, because if we don't care for them, then why would they bother to listen to us when we try to teach them? It's through recognizing everyone's humanity and everyone's right to be viewed as an autonomous human being and given access to freedom and liberty and love and support, because all of us need it. None of us can get through this alone. The world is way too big and there is way too much going on. And so we can either love each other and take care of each other and help each other be better, or we can tear each other down when we fail. And I prefer to do the former, even though sometimes the ways that people fail are pretty awful. So that was the other thing I had to say. Okay, I'm going to go have some curry. You are going to get to see a brief video from the dog park, and that's going to be it. And then it's going to be a weekend, and then I'm going to be away next week, and probably not making episodes. I might do one just to sort of give you a change of scenery and try something that doesn't involve the car. But I would not expect a lot of new content next week. And then probably I'll be back the week after that, though also we're going to be packing up the house then, and stuff's going to get crazy. It's going to get super hectic. Okay, have a lovely day and weekend and time. Bye. Be my friend.